We have made it to conference championship weekend, and while it's true that a lot of teams playing in these title games are making the playoffs whether they win or lose, do not let anyone tell you that these games are meaningless. Sure, playing for seeding doesn't have the same weight as playing for a spot, but there's still a ton of pride and bragging rights in being the best in your conference. So we're going to break down all the major conference championship games this weekend. But before I do, please make sure that you like, comment, subscribe. Let's get into it. Starting with a modern and unfortunately one-sided rivalry, Georgia versus Alabama. We already saw this matchup once this season in Sanford Stadium where Alabama walked in and ripped out Georgia's heart, and now we get it again in the Benz, a place that Georgia fans know all too well and a feeling that we are all too familiar with. And let me be crystal clear. I do think Georgia is clearly the better football team. But honestly, that has been true in most of the matchups of the last 5 years, and it just has not mattered. There's something mental about this matchup, a wall that Georgia just keeps running into, and as a Georgia fan, it is nauseating. But before we get into the picks, let's break down the matchups. First off, both teams are beat up and banged up. Rivalry week took a toll, and the injuries are absolutely going to matter here. This game might come down to which side can hold up physically for 4 quarters. And when you look at the profile of both these teams right now, Alabama has cooled off later in the season. Georgia, though, they seem to be improving every single week. And look, Alabama, they're limited. They can't run the ball consistently. Their execution is shaky, and they have to sweat for every single first down that they get. Yes, they've got the big-time receivers. Yes, Ty Simpson can make explosive plays. He's had to, but this offense is very, very vulnerable. Georgia, meanwhile, feels like a lot more of a complete team. I love Gunnar Stockton. I love the ground game, and the passing attack gives just enough balance to keep defenses honest. Defensively, Georgia is elite at running the ball, although the secondary still worries me a bit. But to be fair, the one time Alabama had success running the ball this year was against Georgia, but I feel like that won't be the case in this game. So let me say this again. Georgia is the better team. From the neck down, this matchup favors the dogs all the way. But from the neck up, who knows? So until Georgia proves me wrong, I am picking Alabama, and I hate to do that. Yes, maybe I'm doing that because I picked Ohio State last week and they immediately broke the streak. Maybe I'm hoping Georgia pulls off that same reverse jinx magic, but hey, Georgia is undefeated in rematches against Alabama. I mean, and that's kind of a lame stat, but whatever. Let's talk about the stakes, though, because this is fascinating. If Georgia loses, they are still in the playoffs. I have almost zero doubt about that. If Alabama loses, it gets a little bit trickier because there is a strong argument that if you were good enough to be in the playoffs before Conference Championship weekend, you should not be punished for having to play an extra game. We saw that logic last year with SMU, and the committee rewarded them for it. So by that standard, Alabama should make the playoffs even with a loss. And if you want to talk about BYU, which we'll do in a second, they don't necessarily have that same protection, even though they are in the same situation as Alabama, but oh well. Anyways, the committee has been inconsistent, they've been chaotic, and flat out unpredictable. So there is a small chance Alabama could get left out if they lose, especially if Georgia wins convincingly, which I don't think will happen. But it's something to think about as we head into Saturday. This game is going to be physical. It's going to be mental. The game has playoff stakes, narrative stakes, and emotional trauma stakes. Georgia's better, but Alabama owns the rivalry. Something has to give. Moving on to Ohio State versus Indiana, and finally, for the first time all season, Ohio State has a real test. We've been talking about for weeks how laughably bad their schedule has been, and now they get to play in the Big Ten Championship game, and we actually get to see them play a legit team, and honestly, I'm really excited for it, because on the surface, Ohio State looks like a super team with zero flaws. Every metric, every game, every highlight, they have looked untouchable. But Indiana has been tested, and they have passed those tests with flying colors. They've been body bagging teams all year, and I still don't think people are going to give them enough credit here for how good they really are. Their offense is straight up explosive. Fernando Mendoza is probably going to win the Heisman, and they've got weapons everywhere. And defensively, they are extremely tough to beat. But as good as Indiana is, I still think Ohio State wins this game and shows everyone that they are for real and the real powerhouse they appear to be. Now, I hope I'm wrong. The last thing I want is for another Ohio State natty. They are by far my least favorite team in college football or really any sport ever. So trust me, I am begging the universe for them to finally show a flaw. But nothing I've seen so far gives me any reason to pick against them until there is a crack in the armor. I've got to roll with the Buckeyes here. So honestly, regardless of who wins or loses, both of these teams are making the playoffs, no question. And moving on to the Big 12, here we are, just like I predicted weeks ago, with a rematch between Texas Tech and BYU. And honestly, I'm not going to waste your time because I think this game is going to look a lot like the first one. Yes, it's always hard to beat a team twice in a row, but this is just a bad matchup for BYU every time. Against most teams in the Big 12, they can pound the rock, they can control the clock, and they can boa constrictor the life out of you. That's what they do best. But Texas Tech is the one team in the conference with the exact personnel to disrupt all of that. We've already seen BYU's run game get completely neutralized by Texas Tech's front, and when BYU can't run, they become a totally different team. One that has to throw the ball to win, and I just don't think they can do that against Tech. So once again, I'm taking Texas Tech, and I think it's going to be decisive. Another clear win for the Cougars, but if I'm wrong, things could get interesting because a BYU upset could shake the playoff picture like crazy, and maybe Notre Dame is not as safe as we think they are. That's all I'll say. So let me call back to what I said earlier, because BYU is in a situation where they are currently good enough to make the playoffs. They are in the Alabama scenario. They are in that field that is good enough to make the playoffs. If they don't play another game, they're in the playoffs. However, if they lose their conference championship game, I guarantee you they will fall out of the playoffs, unlike Alabama. So double standard, sure, but again, Alabama is a better team probably. So if you're going off of the 12 best teams, I do get it, but just something to point out. Anyways, moving on to the ACC Championship game, a game that could send the entire playoff picture into absolute chaos because we've got a 5-loss Duke team playing for a conference title. And if you had told me back in August that the ACC Championship game would be between Duke and Virginia, I would have called you crazy. But here we are. The ACC nightmare scenario is finally upon us. And we've talked about it before, because if Duke somehow wins this game, there's a very real chance that the ACC sends 0 teams to the college football playoff, unless Miami sneaks in through some backdoor scenario. And as hilarious as that would be, I do not think that's the outcome that we are getting. These teams played a few weeks ago, and Virginia handled business decisively on the road. I do not see much reason to believe this time will be any different. Chandler Morris has had a fantastic season. Virginia's playing their best football right now. And Duke, well, Duke has been all over the place. They've lost to UConn and several other mediocre teams. So give me Virginia. I think they win. I think they punch their ticket to the playoffs, and Duke picks up their 6th loss. Still a wild matchup that this even exists. It's crazy. But anyways, moving on to the G5 title games. I'm not going to spend too much time on James Madison versus Troy because personally, I think JMU has this one wrapped up. But hey, stranger things have happened. I'm just not going to break it down. Anyways, the matchup I do want to talk about is North Texas versus Tulane because this one is genuinely a toss-up and the stakes are massive. I really believe the winner of the American Championship game is getting the G5 playoff spot over James Madison, especially if the winner is North Texas. Now, I know most people haven't been locked in on these teams this season, so here's a quick resume rundown. Tulane's notable wins are over Duke. Yes, the same Duke that's playing in the ACC title game, along with Northwestern and Memphis. Their losses came against UTSA and Ole Miss. Pretty respectable. North Texas, on the other hand, has wins over Navy and Washington State, and their only loss was to USF, which was a bit of a blowout. But purely on resume, Tulane feels like the more proven team, and frankly, I do trust Tulane is the better all-around team. But here's where it gets a little tricky because both head coaches in this game have already accepted jobs elsewhere and are still coaching in this game. That introduces a huge mental variable to this game. Which team handles the distractions better? Which locker room stays locked in? There's no real way to quantify that, but it absolutely is going to matter in this game, I think. Even with all that noise, my prediction does not change. At the end of the day, I think Tulane has a higher ceiling. They've played a strong competition, and they've shown more consistency, and they've proven that they can win in different ways. So give me Tulane to punch the ticket to the playoffs. North Texas is good. They're really good, but I think that I trust Tulane a little bit more when everything is on the line. Okay, so those are my conference championship picks this week. It's going to be another great weekend. Stay tuned to this channel because next week we're going to break down all the chaos after the dust settles. So see you next time, and yeah, peace.